Hello everyone, in the last video we cooked a very huge sturgeon and we were left with a very hefty head. As I promised, today we will cook fish soup from it. However, it will just be an unusual soup. At the auction, I bought a very old recipe for the royal soup of the 18th century. The recipe is called Triple Royal Fish Soup with Saffron. The recipe explains that it is triple because it was prepared from 3 different types of fish. The first broth is boiled from the head and tail of the sturgeon. Therefore, we start with the head. The first step is to remove the gills. If this is not done, the broth will be bitter. Done. We transfer the head to the sink and thoroughly wash it from the mucus so that it is perfectly clean. We are also left with the sturgeon carcass. We use this for the fish soup. We chop it into identical pieces. And we remove the film from the edges. To cook the fish soup, as it should be done, in a cauldron, we send the pieces of the island of sturgeon to the cauldron as well as the head itself, and fill it all up with water. And then we chop wood. We need a lot of these wood chips. We send some dry alcohol to the stove and set it on fire. Now we throw in some firewood. The fish soup should be cooked very slowly, avoiding rapid boiling. Then the broth will be as saturated as possible. Periodically remove the foam from the surface. Three onions in the husk are sent to cook. The recipe says that this will give the broth a golden color. In the meantime, we prepare everything for the second broth. We need small fish, namely ruffs or perches. We bought these perch. Now we gut them. This one was also caught with caviar. We also cut out the gills. And rinse the fish thoroughly. And send the already cleaned prepared perch to gauze. We clean everything else in the same way. We put in a lot of greens on top, namely dill and parsley. And the third fish in our soup will be walleye. For me, this is the most delicious fish of all and can be caught in our reservoirs. Its most important plus is that there are a few bones in it. We rip open the belly. And remove the insides. We cut out the gills. Done. We cut off the pike perch's head. And throw that into the cheesecloth. We continue the incision along the belly. And cut off half of the fish, cutting through the ribs. We separate the second half of the meat. We fold the skeleton several times and send that in with the head. We cut off all the fins. And ribs from the fillet. After which, we cut off the fillet from the skin. With the second fillet, we do the same thing. So now we're left with 2 fillets without bones. This will be the meat component of our soup. Now we cut the fillet into convenient pieces. Done. And all the trimmings will also go into the broth. From the spices, we add a mixture of peppers, a lot of bay leaves, and salt. We collect everything into the cheesecloth and tie it up. The soup has been cooking for 2 hours. We take out the head of the sturgeon. And all the other parts of it too. We lower in our gauze bag. This will have to cook about a couple of hours to give all the taste to the broth. In the meantime, we'll prepare our vegetables, carrots and potatoes. Both of these root vegetables are peeled. Cut the carrots lengthwise and into half circles. We cut the potatoes into slices. Our second broth is already cooked. We take out the gauze bag. All the flavors inside the bag have gone into the broth. We also take out the bulbs of onions, Ideally, it is impossible to collect all the foam from the surface of the broth, so we take clean buckets and a sieve. We put also some gauze into that and filter the broth. Done. We put the clean cauldron back on and fill it with the clean broth. We throw in the sliced potatoes and carrots. We cover with the lid so that it boils again. In the meantime, let's go back to the boiled sturgeon head. Despite the fact that it all looks kind of so-so, there's still a lot of meat there. Therefore, we separate it from the bones and put it into the bowl. It turns out that we filled more than half of the bowl with clean meat. Pay attention to the name of the fish soup that we are preparing: Triple Royal Fish Soup with Saffron. Therefore, we take a mortar, pour some salt into it, and the most expensive spice in the world is saffron. We send that into the mortar and grind it in with the salt that it reveals its flavor to the maximum and gives some color. We pour this into the soup. And mix thoroughly. The fish soup is almost ready, so we send the pieces of pike perch into it, as well as sturgeon meat. The recipe explains that this is kind of a ritual, a way to appease the soup by sharing the most holy with the fish. All for the smell of smoke. We dip a burning log into the soup. At this point, it is completely ready, and you can fill the plate. We're left with a very beautiful fish soup with a lot of meat. Now let's try it. Hey there, everybody. Surely everyone knows what a Kinder milk slice is, right? Today, we decided to make one on a truly unimaginable scale. But first, let's open it up and see what it's made of. Here we see 2 chocolate biscuits and a bunch of cream. It's obviously very tasty, but the cream is a little chemically. Let's go to the store. We decided to split the purchase up into 2 stages. Today, we're doing the first. We'll buy all the groceries we need to make huge biscuits. The first thing we need is chicken eggs, as many as 840 of them. The next thing we'll need is sugar. This will take up to 30 kilograms. 11 kilograms of cocoa powder. 2 kilograms of baking powder. 25 kilograms of flour. 13 liters of oil. With all this, we're headed to the checkout. First purchase cost us $245. Now we'll cook the biscuits in our huge oven. But we need to preheat it so it has time to warm up. Now we open up the boxes of eggs. We take out 2 trays and put them on the lower part of the table. We need 420 eggs for 1 batch. We put 2 containers on the table, one smaller, the other bigger. Now we take the eggs and separate the yolks from the whites. took us about 1.5 hours to separate all the eggs. Done. We set the egg whites aside for now. We take the sugar, open it, and pour 15 kilograms into the yolks. Now, using a cement mixer, we beat the yolks into the sugar until the whole mixture turns white. Now we take 6 liters of oil, open it, and fill her up. If we use any less, our biscuit just won't hold its shape the way we need it to. Then we mix well. Ready for our next step. We need 5.5 kilograms of cocoa powder. We open it and pour it out. And now we mix. It takes another 20 minutes or so to mix it all up, and we're left with a very thick dough. Now, we need to carefully pour in 6.5 liters of boiling water. We'll mix this in so that the dough thins out a bit. Done. Now we need flour. We'll start by pouring in the first 5.5 kilograms. And mix it up. Then we'll add another 7.5 kilograms. Now we add in another kilogram of baking powder. And we get a nice, even dough. Our pot is filled to the brim, so we'll take a big wash basin and move our dough into it. Now let's take our egg whites and pour some of them into another saucepan. We tried beating them with our industrial mixer, but it didn't work out. I guess it's pretty impossible to beat that many egg whites into a dense mixture. So we decided to use a self-mixer that does everything itself. Let's pour a little bit of the egg whites into each of them. And turn it on. The process has started. After about 5 minutes, we get this foam. That means it's time to add sugar. We'll mix this for another 2 minutes, and then we can move these whipped egg whites into the chocolate dough. Now let's carefully mix it with a spatula so that none of the air bubbles come out of the whipped mixture. We're going to load in our next portion of egg whites. Move it back to the bowl and mix. As a result, you're going to have a really lush dough. With the second half already in the basin, we do the same thing. Now our biscuit dough is ready. But what do we bake it in? We got help from a friend in a workshop. They drafted up a drawing on a computer, which sends the blueprint to a huge machine that uses a laser to cut out the desired piece of sheet metal. We take our piece of metal from the machine and cut out the places for bends with a grinder. Now we bend the edges until we get a box shape formed. Then all the seams are welded together, and we're left with a giant baking sheet. Now we pour oil all over it and smear it around with a brush. We take out some parchment and cover the baking sheet with it. Thanks to the oil, our parchment will stick well to the sheet. So we cover the whole thing. Done. Now we pour out dough onto it and level it out. done. We transfer the baking sheet into the oven and push it in. We'll bake this for 4 hours at 180 degrees. Then we turn off the oven and leave the biscuit in there until morning, so it has time to set and thicken. The next morning, we take it out. It's risen a little and completely baked. Now we need to make sure the tender part of the biscuit is at the top. We figured out the best way to do it is by applying plywood to the top and 2 planks to the sides. We'll fix these together tightly with clamps. We want to remove the baking sheet for now, so we put another piece of plywood on the table with 4 bricks on it and turn the whole thing over. We remove the clamps and gently lift off the baking sheet. We end up with a beautiful biscuit that weighs as much as 50 kilograms. And it only took 2 days to prepare it. We'll set it aside for now. Now we need to knead the dough for another identical biscuit. Load it all into the oven, close the doors, and the next morning we have another biscuit, just as beautiful as the first one. It's time to go pick up the groceries to make the cream. The first thing we need is a lot of condensed milk. 6 2-liter packages of milk, an unrealistic amount of Amish cheese, 80 kilograms. We'll need agar-agar. We took 200 packages. 2 kilograms of vanilla sugar. 3 5-liter jugs of water. We take all this to the checkout and bag it all up. Our second check came out to $506. We put the Amish cheese that we bought onto the table and open them up. We had 80 kilograms of Amish cheese. All this needs to be ground up, and preferably quickly. We remove the front plate from the mixer and attach the meat grinder to it and the saucer on top. We open another plate and attach the blender. We take a package of cheese, open it, and pour part of it into the blender and the other part into the meat grinder. We close the blender and put a saucepan below the grinder and turn on the mixer. While we are pushing the cheese through the meat grinder, the blender is taking care of everything on its own. The only help it needs is to periodically move out the cheese curds. We ground it all using 6 hands until the cheese runs out. 3 hours later, we have a whole pan of this cheesy mass. We take the tub of water and move the cheese mass into it. We open the vanilla sugar and pour it in. Now we just need the condensed milk. We open a bottle and pour the whole thing into the mixture. We made sure to buy extra, so there's a lot left. Now we use the industrial mixer to mix the cheese with the milk. We're left with a creamy mass. We take 3 jugs with water in a saucepan. Open the water and pour it out. Now we take agar-agar, open it, and pour all 200 packets into the water. For now, just mix the agar-agar and leave to soak for 30 minutes. We cut off part of the roll of industrial foil with a grinder and wrap it around the bottom biscuit in a circle. We fix all this together with tape. And to keep it all even tighter, we will also attach the boards on the sides with the same adhesive tape. It turned out to be such a good form for filling the cream that it doesn't spread. Put a saucepan with water and agar-agar on the stove. Boil for 2 minutes and pour in hot milk. Mix well. This liquid will make the cheesy mass harden, and that way it won't be crushed under the weight of the second biscuit. Pour half into one basin and mix well. Now the second half. While the filling has not started to thicken, we quickly transfer it to the biscuits. Level the filling and leave it to cool overnight. The next morning, the cream is hardened. We remove the foil framework. We had a very tall layer of cream turn out. Finally, the big moment. All that remains is to put the second biscuit on the cream. Done. We finally made a Kinder Milk slice. All it took was 6 days. After calculating the weight of the groceries we bought, we found out that our huge dessert weighs as much as 210 kilograms and costs $766. Let's cut off a piece. This is the type of huge chunk that we're going to ship off to all of our friends and relatives. Look at what a huge sponge cake turned out inside. I put the cream on a piece of sponge cake, covered it with a second one,